Hi guys, welcome back. It's been a while, that's okay. But if you're new here, my name is Anna Marie and I like to talk about books a lot. And apparently it is halfway through the year 2020. My brain did not fully grasp this until I saw the first mid-year freakout book tag, mid-year book freakout tag, book freakout mid-year tag. But once I realized it, I had a miniature panic attack. No, just kidding. And then I realized how fun this tag was once everybody started posting. I have watched this tag before. I've never done this tag before because this is my first year, obviously, making videos. But it sounded like a really fun tag and a really good way to kind of reflect over the books that I've read this year and think about what I want to read for the rest of the year. So, mid-year book freakout tag is what I'm seeing. I'm relying on these people. Also, a little life update, I guess. I'll put the timestamp for the actual start of this video down at the bottom, so you can just skip this if you want. But I have been moving in June. The whole month has been full of fun trips and carrying boxes of books and things. The movers broke one of my bookcases, which made my heart just fall into pieces, much like the bookshelf did. So that was fun, but I did get the joy of actually like putting together my new bookshelves, and I posted a picture on Instagram. So go check that out if you'd like to see it. Once we actually get back to normal and I start getting ready to go back to school and work and everything, I'll be posting from my apartment in front of my actual like bookshelves. For right now, obviously we're still kind of in that gray area where we don't really know where we're going to be and what we're going to be doing. And since I live alone, I just find it easier to stay, at my parents' house because everybody's here. And so that's where I am right now. I am in front of my grandmother's bookshelf, actually. My younger sister has been here working. She's home from school for the summer, and she got a puppy, which has been fun. But since she works during the day, she works at a restaurant, I get to babysit the dog.
What's the matter? Oh.
Which is the joy of my life and also the bane of my existence. No, I'm just kidding. She's a really, really sweet dog, but she is wild and literally will eat anything that she finds. She tried to eat the hairdryer yesterday, so that was fun. So, end of that story update life thing, so we can actually get into the books. Let's do it. So the first question is the best book that you have read so far in 2020. A lot of people would have a hard time with this, but this year I have started to read as much Brandon Sanderson as I can. I read the Mistborn series kind of in December, so I can't say anything from Mistborn Era 1, but I can say The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which is book 1 in the Stormlight Archives. That is definitively the best book I have read this year. There have been books that have come very close, which I will mention in a minute, but The Way of Kings I read in May, and I haven't done that wrap up yet, but it'll be there soon. And I'm not going to say too much because I'll talk about it more there, but honestly, I was so invested in every character, and I can see why a lot of people wouldn't enjoy that first book, because there's a lot of setup and we're learning more about the world, and I'm talking about it when I said I wouldn't, but anyway, it blew my mind. I'm addicted, and I'm currently in the very beginning of book 2, which is Words of Radiance. So yeah, that was my favorite book of 2020. Number 2 is one I'm so excited about, and that is the best sequel that you've read in 2020, and I also have a definitive answer for this one too, and that is The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. I cannot explain to you how much I love the first 2 books in this trilogy, and the third book, The Burning God, is coming out in November, and I am just dying to read the third book. I have seen that people have already been reading it and reviewing it. The jealousy that I feel for these people who have their hands on this masterpiece, I will be patient, even though patience is not one of my best qualities, I'll admit. Anyway, The Dragon Republic was the best sequel I've read this year and over the course of many years. It was such a great follow-up. A lot of times the middle book in a trilogy is just kind of, you're in a lull and not much is going on. That is the exact opposite of what happened in Dragon Republic. It is, I mean, plot-driven, character-driven. There is not one thing that I could point out that I was not a fan of in that book. It blew my mind. It made me cry. I loved it so much. The question number 3 is a new release that I haven't read yet, but I want to. And I have to say that one that I haven't read, but I plan to read in July, I'm doing a buddy read with my aunt, which is so cool because she's actually the only one in my family who reads like I do. And we have very different taste in books. She's more contemporary, thriller, memoirs, that kind of genre. And I'm more fantasy, sci-fi, fantasy, sci-fi, that kind of thing. But we have found a common, we've been trying to like recommend books to each other. So she's given me a couple thrillers because I want to get more into that genre. And I'm trying to like find some fantasy books that aren't in a series, which is very difficult in the fantasy genre. But we've been trying to recommend books for each other. And we've decided that in July we want to both read N.K. Jemisin's The City We Became, because we both just found it really interesting. I have never read anything by N.K. Jemisin. So many of my favorite booktubers have just raved about everything that she writes, and she has such a huge backlist that I want to get to. One more new release that I haven't read, and technically I can't yet because I haven't read the previous book yet, is The Girl in the Stars by Mark Lawrence. And this is a companion trilogy to the Book of the Ancestor trilogy, which I am at the very beginning of the 3rd book in a series, which is Holy Sister. And I think you have to finish that series before you start this new, I think it's called the Ice trilogy? I'm not sure, but it's set in the same world and I really want to pick that up when I finish Holy Sister. Number 4 is the most anticipated release for the rest of 2020. Obviously, I'm gonna have to say The Burning God is my most anticipated. I think about it every day, and November 17th, I will not be available to anyone. If my mom tries to call me, I'm just, sorry mom, end call. I'm just kidding. I will pick up the phone for you if it's an emergency. If you are bleeding. That just got really dark. My point is that November 17th, 2 of my most anticipated releases come out. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I need to figure out how to read 2 books at once. Someone tell me how to do that. Because the Burning God by R.F. Kuang is coming out. And also The Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson is coming out. And by then I will have had time to finish Words of Radiance and Oathbringer. So on that day, I will have a very difficult choice to make. It's gonna be hard to do. Number 5, I'm scared of this question. It is the biggest disappointment that you've had this year. I have a couple, and people are gonna come at me. I'm sorry. I appreciate you as a friend, but these books disappointed me. The first one I have to say is The House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I was not impressed by this book. And I know this is gonna make a lot of people sad, and I'm sorry, I love you, but I expected a lot more, you know. I have only read the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I'm currently doing a reread of that series. And when I picked up The House of Earth and Blood, because it was so intensely marketed as her first adult book, I expected it to have some significant differences, both in writing, in characters, in plot, and all of those different things from her young adult series. And I found that her adult series and her young adult series equal each other. They're the same. I don't know why I was doing that. Yeah, I just found that the characters are so similar, if not exactly the same as some of the characters in her other series. I found that she uses the same tropes in her new adult series. I found that I was just a little let down by it because I had such high expectations. If I had gone in thinking, I know Sarah J. Maas and how she writes, I should not expect it to be any different from what I've read, I wouldn't have been as disappointed. But because I had such high expectations, I was let down. And I did a whole review on the book. It is not an entirely anger rant review, but I did have some problems with parts of the book. I'm sorry, don't hate me. I'm sure nobody is surprised by the second one that I was disappointed in, and that was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. What? I can't. I was gonna do a dedicated review of this book, and then everybody had the same problems with it because those problems were so significant, and there were a lot of them. There were some things in that book, the whole book, really. And again, I think it's just because I had such high expectations. I did a reread of the Hunger Games trilogy, and that is just a masterpiece. It's so well done, and it's so powerful and meaningful. And then we get A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which feels light and not as important. There were so many parts of that book that I was just like, why am I reading this? Why do I need this information? And because it was based on President Snow, I had even higher expectations because we have a villain. I just tried to combine the words villain and origin. We have a villain origin story. And when you have a villain origin story, you automatically have high expectations because you're going to see the development of someone who, we're not born evil. We learn it. We develop over time those evil tendencies, and so you're expecting to see that development and going deeper and deeper into that evil, because who he is in the Hunger Games trilogy is someone, dark and lost and just too far gone almost. And to think that we were supposed to get the development of that from Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes seems astounding now that I've read it. So, rant over. That's disappointing. Number 6 is biggest surprise. I've had some surprises. I guess almost every answer for these questions could be The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. That was definitely a surprise in that it became my favorite book of all time. Not really, but. So I have 2 things to mention for my biggest surprise. The first I read at the very beginning of the year for Polarthon, or I read one of the books for Polarthon, and that is The Bear and the Nightingale. It's not called that. The trilogy, the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden, and that includes The Bear and the Nightingale, The Girl in the Tower, and The Winter of the Witch, I think. And I had seen this trilogy a lot on BookTube, but I had also heard that it is very slow and that not everybody would like it, and I just thought maybe I wouldn't like it because it's slow developing and not really plot driven. So I was hesitant to pick it up, but I did, and it's now one of my favorite series of all time. I really want to read it just every single winter. I want that because the atmosphere, you literally feel like you're in freezing cold temperatures and just right there, and the whole trilogy feels like you're in a fairy tale, and that's what it's supposed to feel like, but you are so connected to the characters that you're right there with them, and the way that it was written and the atmosphere that you're given is just phenomenal, and I can't wait to read it again. It was great. And the second surprise is just still a surprise, it's kind of hard to believe, was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. And they are a writing duo, and they only write contemporary romance. And I don't usually read that genre. As you probably know if you've been here a while, I don't really ever pick it up. But I was doing the Owls readathon, and one of the prompts was to pick up a genre that was a contemporary romance, or a genre that you're, not usually comfortable with. So I picked that up because I had heard so much buzz about it and that it was great, and I loved it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not gonna lie, it was awesome. I had a really fun time reading it. I flew through it. It was a hate to love romance. It was great. I don't know if I'm gonna pick up anything else by Christina Lauren. I might, because I really was surprised at how much I liked that book. Number 7, favorite new author. Oh, there are so many. R.F. Kuang. Are we surprised? No. Michelle Harrison. I did read her first book in that, I think it's a trilogy series, A Pinch of Magic. I read that for the Owls Readathon and I really, really enjoyed that. I can't wait to pick up A Sprinkle of Sorcery next. And also, I guess, Mark Lawrence, because I have loved the Book of the Ancestor trilogy. It's honestly some of the best writing I think I've ever read, or it's up there with some of the best writing I've ever read. Number 8 is newest fictional crush. I don't know if I'd crush on book characters. This is hard. Kaladin? Yeah, I guess Kaladin. But see, I just want him to be like my big brother, you know? I want him to be my mentor. No, I want Dalinar to be my mentor and Kaladin to be my big brother. That's who I want. I just don't think I have any crushes because a lot of times my favorite male characters in books are seriously flawed and sometimes really messed up. And I love reading about characters like that. Like some of those characters are my favorite, but I don't know if I would crush on them in real life if they were like that. Like Neja from the Poppy War. Also Alton Trenzin from the Poppy War. That would be an interesting relationship. Yeah, so I don't know if I have an answer for that one. Newest favorite character, Kaladin, Rin from the Poppy War. This whole video is just a tribute to the Way of Kings in the Poppy War and the Dragon Republic. Okay, I have one that's very specific. So I've been reading the William Shakespeare's Star Wars series. It's Star Wars written in Shakespeare format. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, all of the time, he's a favorite character, but specifically in Shakespeare format, I just want to be his friend while he talks in Shakespeare to me. And while I talk Shakespeare to him. He's awesome in Shakespeare format. Star Wars is awesome in Shakespeare format. Please go read that. I've also been reading Full Metal Alchemist. I'm on volume 3 right now. The Elric brothers, I love them. They're hilarious together and they're dynamic, just back and forth, like picking on each other, but then they're also so close and they've got this bond. It's just been great. I've really liked reading that. That's my first ever manga and I am enjoying it so far. Number 10, a book that made you cry. I don't really cry that much in a book. I have no emotions. I'm just kidding. I have emotions. I just don't cry a lot when I'm reading or in movies that much either. Do I cry? Have I ever cried? I'm just kidding. At most I'll tear up. Okay, I do have one. This did make me tear up at least. I don't know if a tear actually fell, but I was tearing up. The Girl in the Tower, book 2 of the Winter Night trilogy. If you've read this trilogy, you know the exact moment that I had a breakdown and my heart was broken into a billion jillion pieces. If you've read it, you know it hurt my soul. Number 11 is a book that made you happy. And that's really funny because a lot of the books I read are on various serious topics. Even a lot of the fantasy that I read, they focus on like the worst parts of humanity or the hardest things that we have to deal with, like mental illness, PTSD, depression, war. When I say that, it sounds like I read a lot of dark books, and in reality I do. But they make me happy because of how well the authors handle those topics and how a lot of times it's not about, you know, dwelling in those feelings. It's about dealing with them and then being able to overcome them. So I could say so many books. The Way of Kings made me incredibly happy, even though a lot of it was about darker things. Reread the Hunger Games trilogy this year. That made me incredibly happy. Oh, and I've also started reading The Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. I've only read the first one so far, which is All Systems Red, and the way that the character Murderbot, I love him. He's an AI that has hacked into his system, and all he wants to do is watch movies and TV all the time. So And he's also really, really, really socially, he has a lot of social anxiety. So like talking to people is so difficult for him. Just reading about him and that book was awesome. It made me happy. Number 12, the most beautiful book I've bought this year. Ooh, that's a hard one. Oh, okay. I got this book early from NetGalley to review, but then it also came in the Fairy Loot box, and it is so gorgeous. I used to think that I hated the color pink, and I've resisted it for a very long time. And then over the past few years, I've just been like, embrace it. Embrace that I love the pink color, the color pink. Okay, so this book came in the Fairy Loot box, and I just wanted to show everyone and take it around with me all the time because it's beautiful. Oh, my hair did a thing there. It's just got this beautiful aesthetic. It's all very pale colors. The sprayed edges are this very light teal color. And of course it's pink. So, and last question is, what books do you need to read for the rest of the year? Well, there are a lot, and I won't mention the anticipated releases because I already talked about those. I'm just gonna go through my want to read thing on Goodreads and pick out a few. I do want to get to the Inheritance trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I'd like to start, I want to read The Vanishing Half, which I'm going to try to read that in July. At some point this year, I will read The Priory of the Orange Tree. I will read it. And if I don't, I'm going to read it. I promise. I also want to read A Song of Wraiths and Ruin. That's a new release that I haven't read yet by Roseanne A. Brown. And it looks incredible. It's a new YA fantasy. I also want to read The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. That came out earlier this year, or maybe even last year. But I mean, it's gotten a lot of good reviews, so I want to get to that too. And last one I'll mention is I want to read Jade City and Jade War by Fonda Lee. Yeah, Fonda Lee. Those are the first two in the Green Bone Saga, and the third one comes out I think next year, maybe the end of this year, I'm not sure. But I do want to get to that. So yeah, that's my 2020 mid-year book freakout tag. That was a mouthful. Oh, I didn't even mention how many books I've read this year. I guess that's something you should say at the beginning. So I've read 64 books this year. I had a goal of 100 for 2020, and I think I will make that. I'm hoping to go over if I can, but I'm not gonna like set that as a hard goal because I don't wanna not make that goal and then be disappointed. According to Goodreads, I am 15 books ahead of schedule, which is awesome. I've read more books this year than I have read in a very long time, and that makes me extremely happy. It's a hobby that I kind of put to the wayside for a while just because I was just focusing on other things. But when I found BookTube and I saw that everybody was so passionate about reading, I jumped back in, and I have been going ever since, just reading and reading and reading, and it has been awesome. So I can't wait to finish out the year and see what all other books I will fall in love with. And yeah, that's all I have for you. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.